This is an Ellis Mowers and More small engine repair. Stay connected on Instagram and Facebook at Ellis Mowers and More. Comments or questions? Leave them below or email me, ellis@ellismowers.com. Parts used in today's repair are found using the links in the description below. And as always, like and subscribe for more small engine content. On today's repair, we're going to be working on a machine that I've probably had for a couple of years now, and it is in fairly good shape. This is a Troy Bilt Super Bronco from around the year 2006. Now the minus to that is it is one of the early iterations of the Kohler Courage engine. While this machine is in good condition overall, what I remember about it and what I know about it is that we have a crack in the block. So we've already been through that with the Cub Cadet a couple of machines back. And hopefully I can get this to where, again, it's not going to leak or seep and is structurally sound. We'll get it running good again. I don't have a doubt about that. Also, the other thing that I remember about this, I got this mower in a trade deal. I think I sold him like an old Murray riding mower, and he gave me this and then a Poland Pro riding mower that wasn't very old on trade, but again, this was a couple of years ago. I made good on the Poland Pro and probably doubled my money just off of that machine alone, and then whatever we can, muster out of this machine. Should be a pretty interesting product. I think it has, or an interesting video. I think it also has a little bit of a drive issue as well. I don't know if it's missing a spring or something along those lines, but we'll get into it. I'll give you a walk around here in just a second, and we'll see if we can, get rolling on this and turn it into another reliable riding mower for the spring. So I've had this machine, like I said, a couple of years. I've kept it underneath a shelter the whole time I've had it just because of how good of a condition it is in. I didn't want it to start rusting or anything. There's some, machines that I have that aren't really very good cosmetically that I just leave outside. It's just kind of unfortunate. So this is the Kohler Courage that I'm talking about, and if we can get under here, I've washed the machine too. There's the crack that we're talking about, so that's not good, is it? Like I said, I think this is a 2006, it's a 2007 model, 22307. This is an SV590S, so it's a Kohler Courage 19. And got the 42-inch deck. It's the old style 42-inch deck that's a little bit taller and has this squared off discharge chute as opposed to a round discharge chute. I don't think they went to those until about 2009 or 2010. Your model number back here is 13BX60TG766. And your serial number, 1C067. So 2007 model year. Mower. Got an amp meter and everything. This was fairly decked out for a residential mower. PTO's up here on the top. And we just got to kind of figure out how what the situation is potentially with the drive or with the deck belt. I know we were having deck belt issues. I know that sometimes when you push down on the pedal here for the Vera drive that it was a little bit sluggish. I'm thinking that it's missing a tension spring on the back arm of the upper belt, but we'll get into it in due time. This tire's a little, probably needs some ATF in it. It's either the right or the left one. I can't remember at this point. They probably all do, just from sitting. A little bit of paint. But yeah, so I think we're going to have a good candidate here. Even got a little gas level window that you can check so that you don't have to open the hood to check the gas level. So the first order of business here, I think this mower runs, or at least it did when I got it, and this has been probably close to 2 years ago now. Again, we had that crack in the block over here. So that's something we may have, or we will have to address And then I've just put essentially took the hood off of it, unplugged the lights, took the hood off of it, and put a battery in it. I'm just going to see if it starts, and then we'll go from there. Put some gas in it also. Sounds like it might need a little bit of carb work. We'll go forward. Woo. I don't think the belts are routed correctly. It's kind of doing like that Cub Cadet. How about the blades? If I remember right, it may not work very well on like 2. No. But, oh, I think it fell off. Let's see. Well. I'm not getting any readout on the. Yeah, that thing is not like. Yeah, belt slipped off. Oh, we're smoking the belt. No, don't smoke the belt off, Casey. So, oh darn, I hope I didn't screw that belt up too bad. So we've got a something going on with the belt here. I don't know if like the return spring is too tight like we've had on a bunch of previous machines or what, but it does run and cut. We need to fix the running aspect, we need to fix the cutting aspect, and we need to fix the driving aspect. So we'll see what we can do. I might make sure that make sure I didn't smoke the belt too bad right there, trying to put it back on. But I mean, it's a start, right? Seems like this is kind of bent forward a little bit or something. I don't know exactly. I'm not fully sure what all's going on here, but like I said, we'll see. And it's like I said, it's possible that the return spring is just way too tight on this, and it runs good at, you know, the 5th speed or the 5th height, but then not at the other heights. And so maybe the deck is an easy fix on this. We'll find out. But in terms of like the engine and whatnot, I think I've got to remove the engine bolts and put anti-seize on them. we've got an oil leak that's getting pretty bad coming from the top of the engine here. So we're going to attempt to JB Weld and all that stuff to this again, like we did another engine that I have here, and just generally see if we can get this back to a good running and cutting machine that doesn't leak oil. And I think once we do that, it'll be all right. So let me see what my next steps are, and I'll get back with you. Okay, so I'm going to figure out the drive situation first, which means I'm going to go ahead and take the deck belt off. One thing that I did do, this deck is a little bit different than some of the other decks that MTD makes. It's kind of one of an earlier version with the this on the steering wheel. There was a return spring that ran from right there to this blade brake over here. I took it off, and that pretty much solved all of my issues when it came to the belt engaging at all levels and disengaging properly. So I've done many solutions to try to, or possible solutions to getting these decks right again, and it seems like the only one, especially when these blade brakes start getting worn on them, is to simply take the return spring off, and the belt will never fall off again. And you just live with the blades not stopping within 3 or 4 seconds. They, take 10 to 15, so be it. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way that it is, unless I decided to put all new blade brakes on it and things along those lines. Now, what I'm doing now is pulling the deck, which you pull this, and then there's one on the other side. You make sure your deck belt is off. The blade engage cable on the back side here we need to take off right there, and then the bracket on the other side, which is exactly like the one I just showed you. I'm gonna pull those. You'll slide the deck forward, take that front bracket off. Comes off very easily, and the deck should just slide right out. I'm gonna do that next. We'll see what we can find underneath with the drive. So I've done just like I mentioned. We're in the process of sliding the deck out. Just like so. We're gonna look underneath, see what it looks like under there. This setup's a little bit different than the newer ones from like 2009 and later. This is like a 2006 model or 2007 model. The belt itself doesn't look bad. It's just, I don't think it's aligned correctly or something like that. So I'm not fully sure. And we could just have bad belts. Like the rear drive belt could just be a little bit. Yeah, I think that might be it actually. Because this drive belt seems like it's okay. Let's give y'all a run around. So this, I've never really worked on a mower that has had this plate here. And this, I would assume, is correct, because I don't think it's ever been touched. And it's on that side. I wouldn't think that it would come around. Yeah, it's got its way of coming over through there. So I'm wondering if the rear drive belt has just gotten kind of stretched. It does feel a little flat in the front there. So I don't know, guys. I'm gonna look up the drive belts, drive it a little bit more, and I'll see what it ends up being. Everything looks correct. There is a small cut in this belt right here, but apart from that, everything else, the belt itself, well, there's another cut. So we'll have, I'm at least probably gonna put belts on this thing and just see what we've got after that, if it drives better. Because what it's doing, I think I showed y'all. I'll get y'all out of here and I'll show you what it was doing, or kind of give you an illustration. So what it was doing, whenever I'd push the pedal down, it would grab, but then when I pushed it more, it would stop. And so that's why I'm thinking that there may be something going on with the rear belt. In terms of springs, I'll get y'all down here one more time. And what we're doing, we're not pulling heels very well. And usually this spring right here is connected to somewhere on the frame. But this model is a little bit different where it actually connects to kind of this central location right here. And really kind of different. So when we pull this, what's happening is the belt gets tight, but then as it pushes it back, as it pushes this arm back, it's not really interacting with this rear belt very well. And I don't know if the Varadrive pulley may be a little bit messed up too. I'm not sure. I may just need to drive it a little bit and see if it gets any better. But I feel like it should not have that hesitation in how it drives. So kind of makes me wonder if something's going on here with this spring, like it needs to be over here or something. But the way that this arm is, it doesn't really allow it to be over there without let's see. So I don't know if changing the alignment of that spring will help any, but we can try that. We could try, let's see, we could try this right here. Actually, hold on. To give it a little bit more spring tension. And just try that and see. I don't know. A little bit of an experiment. I might drive it around and see if that makes things any better. So by simply switching the side that spring was on, it completely changed it. This thing right here will fly now. Woo. Want some donuts. This thing right here will run. This thing right here will run. My gosh. It's the fastest MTD mower I think I've ever had. Alright. I think we've had enough fun for now, because what I really need to do is fix that crack in the block. So, and the driving issue, it looks like I've gotten resolved for the most part. And the mowing issue, it seems like I've gotten resolved for the most part by just taking off that spring. Like I said, kind of a cop-out, but I've tried a bunch of other ideas. That's an OEM belt on there because I told the previous owner before we did a trade deal to put an OEM belt on, and it still didn't cut right. As soon as I took it off, I'll show you when I put the deck back on and give this thing a test run. I will shoo, that is a bad oil leak. We'll get that fixed too. Wow. Anyways, I'll show you all how it works and all that good stuff. Make sure that everything is good on it. Well, I've tried many other different ways to try and get these MTD decks to work right, and the best, I guess the best of the worst options would be taking that return spring off. What it does is it keeps a little bit of tension on the belt, takes a little bit longer for the blades to turn off, but it doesn't wear out deck belts nor cause the belt to jump off of the pulleys like I've had with so many other MTD machines. Well, I've drained the oil out. It's now time to go to town on this thing. And also the carburetor was leaking a little bit, so I've got a ton of Hipa carb kits here that I can swap out for a Kohler. So we're going to take off, well, we got a battery. A little cold outside. There we go. Get a deep well. Just going to take the engine cover off first here. This big gas tank seems to get in the way. Luckily I didn't have a lot of gas in it. I don't have a shut off on this yet, and just ended up going to having the issue of leaking the carburetor out. So this gets us to this point. We need a couple of Allen wrenches, but we also pull this off, and we'll get a bolt to take that off. We've got to take the starter off as well. As long as the key switch is off, then we're fine. We don't have to unplug the battery. We'll take off the 6-pin connector, and then 7/16 wrench will get the starter. We have to take the starter off in order to get this cover off as well, because it's all joined together. Our crack is right there. Are any of these bolts loose? I don't see where these bolts are loose, but we do need to obviously take and open everything up here to seal it from the inside as well as the outside. So a little bit of work ahead of us. We have this bracket to take off with some star bits, the ignition coil to take off with some Allen bits. We'll go ahead and unplug this coil wire, and let's see, what else do we have here? We've got this wire we need to get rid of. We'll unplug this from the spark plug, because I mean, the engine runs great. If we can get this crack to seal, then we're going to be good. So I'm going to take off all those things. Again, this is like a 14 millimeter. Well, those are a couple of 10s, and the stars, and the Allens, and then the 7/16 nut on the bottom of the starter. Y'all haven't missed much. All I've done is take the ignition coil off, take this bracket off, and take the flywheel nut off. Now, in lieu of hitting the flywheel bolt and prying up on this flywheel, these have the pre-tapped holes on the sides for a puller, especially since these tops of these blocks on this bucket engine can be kind of brittle. I find it better to use one of these in order to get this off. So we'll take the socket here, or the nut, which I think is a 5/8. 9/16. Now I just take this and set it on there and pull just like that, and it pulls the flywheel off. Again, this is kind of a safer way to do it as well. And then we'll take 13 millimeter and pull it off, or pull the bolts off. Then we'll remove the flywheel. We'll take there we go. So the puller, that's good. I tried to see if I got lucky and tried to knock it a couple of times. But after it didn't go the first couple of hits, I didn't want to mushroom the bolt. So let's see, we'll get this off. Our flywheel key is intact, so that's good. All of our magnets look good as well on the flywheel, so that's good as well. Then we'll take off the stator here and the starter. Stator and starter. So let's see. We'll have to get one of the smaller torques to get that off. I think they're the T25s or the T20s. '25s. And the nice part about all this is that I don't see any of these bolts that are loose either, so that's interesting. Nice part about all this is that you don't have to pull the engine off of the mower in order to fix this. That's the plus of it being a bucket engine, I suppose. Now the issue we have is the way that these wires come in. Let's see, we're going to do a couple of 10 millimeters. I think these are 10s. Yes. Before I do the other 10, I'm going to pull off the bolt, or the flywheel nut, or the starter nut, excuse me. Can. You know, when stuff is on here for a while, sometimes it doesn't like to get off very easily. There we go. Okay. Alright, so that starter nut is out of the way. It's not terrible to take all this stuff off and do what we're doing here. Still though, if Kohler made a decent engine. And again, this is more of an experiment than anything. Y'all saw I did it on the Cub Cadet. And as of now, I still have that mower and I may put a Briggs on it. Because a lot of y'all didn't like the fact that I fixed a crack in the block. Although it's still seeped a little bit, the thing runs great, which is what I wish it would run a little bit, you know, better, I suppose, but, or it could run worse. If it ran worse, it'd be different, but. Alright, so we're gonna pull this wire. So the thing is, like the stator and the voltage regulator and all that is all tied into this, and the wires go down. You have to physically take the wires out of the voltage regulator in order to get, or the voltage regulator connector, in order to get it above and through this right here. So you see that? It's like I literally have to take the wires out of the voltage regulator in order to get it through. So kind of crazy, but what I could do when I pull a sump is I could just take the whole voltage regulator setup, wiring harness and everything with it. What I'm going to do next is come over here and take off the carburetor, because we've got to do that anyways. And we'll see. Go ahead and cap this fuel line off here. Ooh, got it a little tighter than that. Okay, and a couple of 10 millimeters again. The 8 millimeter up top's already been taken off with the cover. Since I've got so many carb kits for these Kohler Courages, I'm not going to worry about trying to get this to where it's not going to leak. So pull this breather tube out. Pull that wire right there. Pull the fuel line off. Come on now. Okay. Just gonna loosen that up, so hopefully it'll just pull off here. There we go. And then there's an 8 millimeter for the ground wire that we got to get off. Eight millimeter. We'll just set that aside for right now. And let's see, I think I can just pull this like that, and then slide that all completely out there. Pull the choke off, and that's the carb, so that's good. And we won't keep that, we'll put a new one on here. Hopefully it'll solve any other weird running issues we had too. And then we have this cover, we'll just set to the side just to get it out of the way. Next order of business, it looks like we are at the point where I can pull this wire out of the way. There's a voltage regulator on this side that I showed y'all earlier. That is right there. We'll take a couple 8 millimeters to pull that off. And we can unplug that regulator. We don't have to. They just got all them wires intermingled with each other. It's a really bad design in terms of being able to service it, because this is one of the early Kohler Courages here. So now what I'm going to do is just a bunch of 10 millimeter bolts. I'm going to take and just pull them off. They're not broke or anything. I don't know why the block just cracked. I guess it's just a weak design for these early ones. And I'm just going to pull all that off. We'll look inside and then start doing the prep work to hopefully marry all this stuff back together. I want to do it better than I did the original one that I tried to do this to. I think that's why I've still got a little bit of an oil leak. Of course, I could be wrong. We'll see though. Got all those bolts off. None of them are terribly loose, so it kind of makes me wonder. But rubber mallet, we're going to just kind of tap this thing up. Yeah. There we go. Eventually it will release just like it did. And need to take this flywheel key out. She's kind of stuck in there a little bit. Okay. Get that out of the way. Should be able to lift this right on up out of here. Just like that. And there's our awesome inside. To this Kohler Courage, or lack thereof. So our twin cams, what we need to do is line up all the dots so that I can take this cam out. So let's see, I wonder if I can do that underneath here. Pull the plug. And we're only concerned about this side. I don't see any leaks coming from anywhere else. We're doing this so that we don't have to worry about compression. You can see that this thing's been running really lean too, so with that white on the plug, slide this cam, or slide this back. Let's see. Looks like, well, here we are. Alright, so I've lined the dots up with each cam mark, and this cam should just pop out now. Excellent. So now what I've got to do is, I'll get this out of the way for a second. I have to clean up everything here on the block with some brake cleaner. Let's see if I can show you all the crack on the inside here. You can kind of see it start from up top here and then slide its way down through the block right there. I'm going to pull this shaft out as well. Just kind of put it to the side. I know it's got a little oil on it, but that's okay. And I'll pull this 8mm out as well so that I can get a good vantage point of how far the crack goes down. You can see it kind of goes right here where the intake push rod is. See if I can pull that out. Okay, so pull that out as well. And then what I'm going to do is pretty much take a Dremel and sand, or just kind of grind this down a little bit. And then take me some JB Weld and try and seal everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up everything here, making it look pretty, cleaning up all the gasket material and whatnot as well, and then I'll start putting everything together on it. One thing I've done a little different this time than I did the last time whenever I tried to repair one of these cracks is something that I saw on other videos, to where somebody drilled a relief hole for the crack so that it wouldn't spread any further down. And we're going to try that out. What I have done is I have dremeled a little bit of a groove in the crack so that you can't really see it anymore, actually. And sanded it. Sanded the whole area down here as well, and up here, just to get a nice rough surface. And then same thing on the inside. A little bit of a groove, sand it down, and we'll put the JB Weld on next, and I'll make sure that we don't have any oil coming out of that as well. Alright, so I prepped it, and now I've put the JB Weld on it. Again, for me, this is a little bit of an experiment more than anything, but cleaned everything off. I've JB Welded everywhere where the crack is on it, and we got it all situated there, and we should be in good shape here to hopefully not have any sort of cracking or anything along those lines in the engine, and just let it set up for a little bit of time. Trying to expand it out just a little bit because I think I'm kind of on the crack a little bit on the outside here. But we'll let it sit, like I said, for a little while, probably overnight. And then what we'll do tomorrow morning is come out here and put everything back on it and just let the gasket sealer sit for a day, and then we'll try everything out. And hopefully what'll happen is we have a good engine that doesn't leak anymore. And one other thing I think I've got to do, because I've seen some like metallic residue down here, I don't know from what, but what I think I also need to do is tighten up those bolts underneath for the mounting bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Just snug them back up because I think they vibrated themselves off, unfortunately. And we'll just see. Hopefully this will fix the issue. Again, like I said, experimental. Engine runs good. The mounting bolts are actually good, so this is a better situation than the Cub Cadet that I attempted to do this on. And we'll just see if this works. Alright, so JB Weld is dried. We are on the next day here, and everything seems like it's set up. I sanded everything like it needed to be. I've put the cam back in. I wanted to show y'all how that's done. What you have, it was a little tricky. You'll see when you put this cam shaft back in, like the actual shaft portion, that there are two pins. Now the shallower side goes in first, but then you have to kind of turn that camshaft to line it up with the deep end so that this sprocket can go back in and join where it's supposed to join here on the engine. It doesn't look like it's all the way down right now, but we're going to work on that here in a second. But that's the way that you put it back in. Then you put this washer on top of it and you're good to go. So that's how to do it. And now next I'll put a bead of silicone, or not silicone, but gasket maker around all of this, and we're going to set the sump on top of it. Okay, so I put all the accessories back on, carburetor and everything. I think I showed y'all how I took everything off. And I also, I think I showed y'all how to put the cover back on. The one thing I didn't show y'all is to set the governor. So what you need to do for that, if you have not taken any of this off, then you're probably fine. But I, of course, was smart and loosened up the governor because I didn't like the weight, because it felt like it was going around and round in a loop-de-loop. But what you do, loosen this nut, put it on full throttle, turn this to the left all the way. Make sure you have a little bit of tension on it because it will, that governor, that little governor arm, it will rest up against that. And so, and it looks like it goes straight across here. You'll feel the resistance whenever you get there. Turning it to the left. Hold that resistance, tighten that nut back up, and that'll get your governor back. Now what I'm gonna do, I messed that up, so I actually had to go through and take the top part of it off again. I have a 3-inch vise here, or C-clamp, that like I did on that Cub Cadet. I have run it briefly here just to make sure that I had the governor back right. Now what I want to do is I'm going to pull this valve cover off, and I'm going to check the valve clearances. And again, it's just a bunch of 10 millimeters. I'd hate to do this because the valve cover is not leaking, but we'll just take a bunch of 10 millimeters off. I'll show you the process as to how to do that here in just a second. Sorry, it's just been a little bit of a headache when I didn't get the governor right, and I thought I messed it up on the inside. I wanted to double check my work and just understand exactly how it works, since I'm still kind of in the novice phase of working on these Kohler Courages and trying to get them back going again. But so far I've let it run briefly. There's no leaks and no cracks yet, so that's good, and we'll find out if that's going to persist here in the near future. So there may be some covers that you have to take off in order to get to this point, but again, it's different on every machine. This one right here I actually had to take off. There were 4 bolts right here to hold this little shroud on. I had to take that off in order to get access to this valve cover. That involved me having to kind of improvise on having to do these hood mounts as well. I actually ended up taking off the back bolt of the hood mount because the front bolt I couldn't really get off because of the way that the shroud is, and just kind of bent them around, and I'll bend them back, and it won't be that big of a deal. Now, the intake valve, these valves seem to get loose over time, and I have tightened the intake valve, so we're good there. We got it at top dead center. And now I'll check the exhaust valve. The exhaust valve seems to be good too. But, let's see. I'm just going to make sure. Let's see. We'll make sure that the intake valve is good. And I usually try and do everything to about 5 thousandths. I've got 5 thousandths here. It could barely fit, but the 3 thousandths will slide right in there. So we've got anywhere between 3 and 5 thousandths. I don't mind them being a tad tight, because they will loosen up over time. They always do. I've seen some of these that have been way out. So let me see about this. I think this one was a little too tight, and it is. So now what I need to do, I need to get my 10 millimeter wrench. Just making sure that we've got what we need to do here. Take a T15, I'm going to loosen that, and I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to barely turn it, like just barely, about right there. I just don't want it eating the cam up or anything like that, you know. So, and I was right, this valve was a little tight, so. I thought it was whenever I worked on it, or whenever I worked on the inside of it. So, we go just a little at a time. There we go, so we can get 3 thousandths slid in there now. And then need to find my 5 thousandths, which I just had. Where are you? There you are. And 5/1000 looks like it can slide right in there too, just barely. But I'll double check my 3/1000 feeler. Trying, like I said, between 3 and 5/1000 is where I'm aiming to be on these. And seems to work. So I'll double check the intake valve here real quick as well. I can get that feeler gauge in there. So that's the gist of how to do that. Then we're just going to put this valve cover back on for the time being. I am going to reseal it because it probably will leak now. But just getting close to the end of the day here. It's kind of one of those things. You just want to make sure that it runs and drives like you want it to. And then we should be getting close after that. I had to put a new blade on the crazy. Okay. Had to put a new blade on the mowing deck. So we had that going. And I'm just going to put all these back on. Probably going to leak like crazy for just this moment, but that's okay. Like I said, we're just making sure it does what it needs to do before we go ahead and reseal everything. So let me get it down, and I will show you that it starts and runs really quickly as well. Hemorrhaging oil like it was. That's good. Again, it's probably leaking. It ain't leaking on the valve cover yet. We'll check it overnight, make sure it doesn't leak. I am going to put the covers back on it, and so that I can at least run it and drive it and not overheat it. I think, let's see. Can I get it on here without having to? Let's see. It was a little bit challenging with the way that I had the clamp on it, but what I could do is cut away a little bit at the, let's see, I could just cut that little area off right there if I need to, so that it'll sit down just right, because I don't really want to move that clamp because it's doing a good job. And I don't know. Again, this is just kind of an experiment, y'all. So I'm going to just kind of bolt everything back together real quick. a couple of bolts that I need to take care of, and just let it run and drive for a little bit of time, and then we'll come back to, I'll put everything, all the covers and stuff back on it, which is just a few bolts. I'll cut away that, and then we'll work on the mowing deck, because I think we'll have to do a little bit of work to that as well next, just to get everything working like it should. Well, it is the next day. I have put all the stuff back together on the machine itself, and what I did in order to accommodate the clamp is just cut a small hole out of the cover here, and what I could also do is cut this off. As long as this is a nice permanent hold, I don't see any leaks from where I repaired the crack, which is a huge plus. It also set overnight. Didn't seem like it had any issues with any oil leaks, so that's a good thing. Put the hood back on. All the headlights and everything work on it, so that's a plus. And I'm in the process of putting the deck on now. I've just done a couple of small things like realign the steering wheel because it was 180 degrees off, and found a blade. Since these blades are relatively new, or at least have good lift, I didn't want to do anything with that, putting a whole new set of blades on since one of them was good. I found another good blade that should still have a lot of life left. And then also, because I had a couple of brackets. Now these decks are a little thin, so they can get somewhat difficult to try and weld brackets back on, but the brackets were starting to break away, kind of like they often do on these machines. And so I have that. I've welded that, hopefully to reinforce it. And one other thing, let me turn over the deck and I'll show you what I've done on top here. And one thing that y'all see I've done, I still need to put another one of these blade guards on, because I did tell the guy to put it on just because the belt was jumping off whenever he had it. And it just seems to be that these older, once these MTD decks age, when they disengage, it's just like they have too much slack on the belt, even if it's a new OEM belt. And it seems the only thing that will fix it is to take off the return spring. It's a little bit slower to disengage the blades, but the belt doesn't jump off. Or at least in my experience, I'm not having that issue with the belt jumping off anymore. The obvious thing is I've put a Craftsman discharge chute on this machine. I had it just laying around because I don't have any MTD ones. When you look online, you can't get one of these discharge chutes for less than $70. I was like, whoa. So I slid this one on. I had a bracket, drilled a couple of holes, put it in there, had the spring for it, and it fits. I mean, it fits right around this discharge chute, what seems to be just fine. So, or the discharge area on this mower. And if anything, it will help. You don't have to have one for these style decks, but the problem is what they'll do is that they'll discharge really high still, and you don't want to be like kicking rocks up and throwing out or breaking your windows and things along those lines. So just remember that. If you do buy one of these new, you can get one of these for about $20 online, and if you need the little bracket for it, that chute, the $20 for the chute, includes the spring and this little mounting bar, which is a huge plus. And then you can find the little mount here for $11 to $15, and all you'd have to do is put you a couple of bolts and nuts in right there, and you'll be good to go. Lot cheaper, less than half the price of buying a replacement discharge chute. And on a mower like this, if it's just a really, really cheap mower, I'm not going to worry about them. But on a mower that looks as good as this, I want to have something that looks presentable. And after we shine this up with a little bit of ATF, it'll look much more presentable. But what I'll do now, I've got everything welded, blades are on, deck belt's on. We're going to slide everything back under the machine, and we'll give it a a good little test run here, and hopefully the cracked block will not crack again after I've JB welded it. That'll run good, drive good, and cut good, and be ready for sale. Running good. I've cut the entire backyard with it, at least blown around with some pine straw. She's ready to roll. Like I said, the only negative is that it takes a few seconds for the blades to stop. But they do. You can see I did a little bit of cosmetic on the deck. Spray a couple of spots that may need it. Transmission's working good. Deck's level. I could throw a little bit of ATF wipe on that mower deck chute that I put on here, which is working really good. Headlights are working. No oil leaks, no cracks. I think I'll take it, y'all. This one's in such good condition that I don't even have to recondition it with and shine it up with ATF. It's good as it is, so that's a big plus also. And the deck belt's relatively new because the guy had put it on there. I tried to help him figure out what was going on with the deck, and again, it's just like, seems like the return spring's the only thing. I think y'all saw I put the clip over through the shroud here. I may just cut that off just so that it becomes a permanent fixture on here, but again, kind of want it to be able to be taken off too if you need it to be. But yeah, she's working great. There's no leaks coming from the area right here, which is fantastic. It's not cracking like the other one was that I did on that LTX1040 Cub Cadet. I don't have any oil leaks on the valve cover. I didn't even have to replace the valve cover on it. And the only thing I am just keeping an eye on is this little oil drain right here. Y'all know these like to leak a little bit, but man, everything's good on it. Otherwise, we're got the huge gas tank on it. I mean, this thing will hold a ton of gas tank. The Super Bronco is a little bit upgraded over the regular Bronco with just a little bit different, like plastic covers and around the deck height adjusters, and a little bit different ergonomics when it comes to engaging and disengaging the blades. And at this time it had the Kohler Courage on it too, so turned out really well, and y'all see it's working good, and really happy with it. With the carburetor as well, with the Hipa carb, working awesome. I'll link those down in the description below, everything that I used and common parts that you may need for this machine. Alright, so there it is. I think we have done a successful experiment here. I know that a lot of y'all will disagree with me, because I asked, would you sell something like I did with that LTX1040? This may be a little bit different because there are no leaks. If I didn't tell you that there was a crack in the block that I repaired, you probably would never know. The thing that I did differently here, and there's a couple of other variables, the thing that I did differently was I prepped the inside of the block a little bit better, and I prepped the outside of the block a little bit better. rubbed it down with some sandpaper, kneaded all the high temp JB Weld together, which if I remember I'll put a link in the description below for some high temp JB Weld. The steel stick type is what I used on this application, and I think we're pretty close on it. I think we're pretty much done, and I've had this thing back here under some shelter for a couple of years. Pulled it out, it ran, the carb leaked a little bit. We put a carb on it, we had to replace a blade and fix the cracked block and put a battery in it, and really and truthfully that's all we've had to do to this thing. We took the return spring off for the deck belt, or I guess the return spring for the blade brakes. We took that off as well. So we've done a few little things, not a ton of time invested into this. I don't really have any money invested in it either, outside of a battery and then the carb kit, which I got on a killer deal off of Hipa when they were having a clearance sale a while back. So probably refresh the deck a little bit, just threw a little black paint where there were some surface rust areas. We had to weld a little bit on the brackets as well, but nothing ridiculous, nothing crazy. And considering how clean this machine is, I am happy with how it turned out. As of recording this in the middle of December, the ones that y'all have seen recently on the channel, the Bronco, that was a 2010 model that I did the full restoration on, and the LTX1040 have both sold. The 1040 actually sold with me disclosing all of that, so I am not going to be putting a new engine on that because it actually did sell, despite having the leaking engine. So I guess you live and you learn a little bit. We learned a lot on this, learned a lot about how the governor works on these Kohler Courages, and hopefully we found a way that we can keep repairing these cracked blocks on these things and getting them running and staying running a little bit longer than just a few years. I think these early Kohler Courages are the ones that are most prone to cracking the block. This one's a 2007 model. I think the other ones that I've worked on that have had cracked blocks have been like before the year 2010. So I wonder if they kind of had everything sorted out after 2010. I'm not fully sure. We did end up having to tighten the bolts down on the bottom a little bit as well, because they were starting to, the engine was starting to rock a little bit. They just needed snugging back up. I snugged them up, and everything seems to be good on that now as well. It probably also contributed to why the block started cracking. But we're in great shape. I probably list this mower for $600 because it is a little bit older, and although it is in great condition, I do have that cracked block repair, and I usually knock about $50 to $100 off whenever I sell it with one of these when I fix a cracked block. Good value for somebody. Should be a great mower for quite a few years for whoever decides to purchase it. I appreciate y'all watching this video, and just let me know in the comments section, have you ever attempted to do cracked block or repair cracked blocks on Kohler Courages? I've seen a couple people do it. You never know the success or the longevity of it. But then again, if I throw a Briggs on it, you never know when the compression release will fail on it. So it's just kind of like pick your poison. If I can get this to where it runs good, doesn't leak, then, and JB Weld works, then so be it. We're going to let it ride, and it should be a good machine. I stand behind my stuff. I'm not going to sell it as is, and if something happens to it on their first mow, then it sucks for them. I'm not like that. I always stand behind my stuff and help people, especially if it's something that goes bad because of a repair that I did. So that's why I can be a little bit more at peace with this than just selling it as is and not disclosing the issues. Thanks again for watching, y'all. I've talked for nearly 5 minutes here on the end of this video, but I will see y'all on the next one. Take care.